Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Books had always been a part of my life. As a child, I would lose myself in the pages of my favorite novels, and as an adult, my love for books only grew. Over the years, I had collected an extensive collection of rare books, and they had become my most prized possessions. I had carefully curated my collection, ensuring that each book was in the best possible condition. One sunny Sunday afternoon, I had decided to take a day off and spend some quality time with my family. We spent the day exploring the local park and indulging in some delicious food. As we returned home in the evening, I had an uneasy feeling in my gut. Something just didn't feel right. As I walked towards my study, my heart sank. I could see that the door to my book room had been forced open. I rushed towards it and swung it open. My worst fears were confirmed as I surveyed the room. The shelves were bare and my rare book collection was gone. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I was devastated. I immediately contacted the police and reported the burglary. The officers arrived promptly, and I gave them a list of the books that had been stolen. I also provided them with an estimated value of each book. The police assured me that they would do everything they could to catch the thief, but I had little hope that my books would be recovered. Days turned into weeks, and there was no news from the police. I was feeling hopeless and devastated. My collection was my most prized possession, and it felt like a part of me had been ripped away. One day I received a call from a local bookstore. The owner told me that he had received an anonymous call from someone trying to sell rare books that matched the description of my stolen collection. The owner, being a book lover himself, was immediately suspicious of the caller's intent and asked them to bring the books to the store. The caller showed up at the store the next day, carrying a large bag. The owner recognized the books immediately as they matched the description of the books I had reported stolen. He called the police, who arrived promptly and arrested the thief. The books were recovered, and I was overjoyed. However, my joy was short-lived as I discovered that some of the books had been damaged. They had been thrown carelessly into the bag, and some of the spines were broken, and pages were torn. It was heartbreaking to see my beloved collection in such a state. I had them assessed by a professional, and the damage was estimated at several $1,000s. I contacted the thief's lawyer, and we negotiated a settlement. The thief agreed to pay for the damages and also pleaded guilty to the burglary. The trial was long and arduous, but justice was finally served. The thief was sentenced to several years in prison. As for me, I was just grateful to have my books back, even if they were a little worse for wear. In the end, I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of home security. I invested in a more advanced security system and also ensured that my book collection was insured. It was a tough experience, but I was glad that I had taken the necessary precautions to safeguard my most prized possessions. As for the thief, his time in prison had a profound effect on him. He realized the gravity of his actions and started working towards reforming himself. When he was released, he reached out to me to apologize for what he had done. He offered to pay for the damages again, but I refused. Instead, I suggested that he start his own book collection and channel his love for books into a more positive outlet. He took my advice to heart and started working at a local bookstore. Over time, he became an expert on rare books and started to collect them himself. He even started a program where he would visit schools and libraries to talk about the importance of reading and the value of rare books. He had truly turned his life around, and I was proud of him for it. In the years that followed, I continued to collect rare books, and my collection grew even more extensive. I made sure to take extra care in securing them, and I also started to catalog them in a digital database to keep track of them more easily. I shared my love of books with others, and even started a book club that met regularly at the local library. However, my peaceful existence was shattered one day when I received a call from the police. They had arrested someone for the theft of a rare book from a local bookstore. It was a book that I had seen before and recognized as one that had been in my collection before it was stolen. I went to the police station to identify the book, and sure enough, it was one of mine. I was shocked and angry that someone would dare to steal from me again. The police told me that they had caught the thief in the act of stealing the book, and that they believed he was responsible for other thefts as well. I decided to press charges, and the thief was brought to trial. This time the trial was swift, and the thief was sentenced to a longer term in prison. However, this time I felt no joy or satisfaction in the outcome. I was just tired of the cycle of theft and destruction. I wanted to find a way to break it. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I had this cabin in the woods high up on the mountainside. When I bought the property, we were able to buy all the land near the cabin except for one parcel. The previous owner of the entire set of properties had a spoiled son who liked to get drunk and gamble away everything he earned. So we got all but one parcel. He managed to scrape up enough cash to get one parcel right below our cabin. His parcel was entirely surrounded by mine. There's a road going up and over the mountain that first passes by the cabin and continues on through his parcel, finally ending at a pond below that. When he decided to build on the parcel, I granted him an easement for power, water, and road access, which I had my lawyer write up because I was busy in the city. I was trying to be a good neighbor. I only went up on weekends, so I didn't have too many problems. We managed just fine for a few years. I didn't like him much, but we kept to ourselves, though he had a weird habit of sneering at me when he drove by in his girlfriend's car. The police came out a few times because he was fighting with his girlfriend, but he left me alone until one day during a particularly hot August. His girlfriend left him, but he won at the tracks. He bought a new truck. He liked his new truck. He drove his new truck past my cabin all weekend long, back and forth, non-stop. I was trying to get the last part of a rather difficult book finished, and didn't need a Mario Andretti wannabe tearing up my peace of mind. But it was a private road, so any traffic problems had to be settled without the help of law enforcement. I had a sweet cocker spaniel named Mindy who stayed inside most of the time and only went outside to do her business. She was terrified of the big Dodge as he went up and down the mountain, throwing gravel and mud everywhere. When I went outside to tell him to stop, he flipped me off, called me a few choice words, and threatened to run me over if I didn't get out of his way. I just shook my head and went inside, resolving to settle his problem with a lawyer instead of fighting him. I didn't want to accidentally kill him. He wasn't a very big guy and all mouth anyway. I figured it was the liquor talking, so I walked Mindy and kept her inside that weekend. I had to wear headphones to tune out his act while living in a cabin in the woods. He was pissed because I bought his father's land, despite the fact that his father left him enough money to buy it several times over. He told my solicitor all of this when he wrote up the easement. My lawyer informed me of this when I contacted him about the dangerous Dodge dirtbag. He continued driving up and down the mountain like a maniac for the next 4 weekends. He did not stop even in the dead of night. He just went on and on and on, and I locked my doors hoping he wasn't so deranged that he would set my cabin on fire. Fortunately, the second weekend my lawyer told me to get video and pictures if possible, but not to confront him lest he cook up a song and dance for his lawyer. So I set up a camera and a game by the corner of my house about 5 yards from the road. I have groceries delivered once a month to the cabin by the local supermarket in town. The delivery person has instructions to leave the bags on the back porch. I didn't hear her knocking on the 5th weekend, and so she let herself in and put the bags on the kitchen counter. While she was leaving, Mindy slipped outside to do her business but couldn't get back in. I didn't hear her barking, but I did hear her yelps when the drunk bastard ran her over. I ran outside, and he was standing over her cursing Mindy. He'd run her over and was taking his twisted frustration out on her while she was dying, so I shoved him away and scooped her up. I then raced into town to see the vet. By the time I got to town, she was cold and I knew it was too late, so I limped back home broken-hearted and angry. I took Monday off and buried her beneath an old bay tree. On Tuesday, I took the footage and the game camera stills into the city and gave them to my lawyer. The pictures were on film, so it took a couple of days to get them developed, but the VCR tape told the whole story. He'd seen her beside the cabin and had veered off the road to run her down. The evil grin on his red face looked demonic. I asked my lawyer if I could sue him. He said I could, and we had plenty of evidence to cause him serious harm, but in the meantime he'd still be living there and things would only escalate. At the time, dogs were considered property and didn't have anything in the way of rights. Still don't, which is a pity. But I wanted a fight, and my lawyer knew that if he didn't throw me a bone, I'd go back up that mountain and beat the dirtbag to death with his own wrenched-off arm. My lawyer calmed me down and took out the lease agreement. In it was a standard maintenance clause, but there was also a stipulation in the easement that prohibited acts that might disturb the peace and harmony of the owner. It had a quit clause that automatically rescinded his easement should he persist in such acts for a month or more. My lawyer had sent him a letter to the effect the second week and didn't get a reply. The mail was registered, and he had to sign for it in town at the post office. I had my lawyer serve him with a quit notice. In that state, a notice to quit an easement doesn't have the same level of difficulty as a notice to quit tenancy, which can drag out for 6 months or more. If you are in violation of an easement right and are ordered to quit it by the owner, you can appeal, but in the interim you must by law stay off the easement, and any utilities passing through can be cut off at the owner's pleasure, unless doing so can cause a life-threatening situation. But I didn't cut off his water and power right away. We didn't start proceedings on the suit until later. He continued to drive on the road after the order to quit, only faster and with more profanity. I got it all on tape. I told him so, and he said he didn't care. He said ugly like me should just die. So I decided to stay away until the suit was initiated. So a month later I had workers on the mountain put in a nice gate. Solid construction in 3 feet of concrete. I could open and close it with a garage door opener. I had barbed wire fence around the whole property, so the only way in or out was via the gate. I had a pedestrian gate put in beside the road and left that unlocked. It was about a 1/4 mile to the cabin and half again that to his place. A fairly long walk for a raging alcoholic. I got good pictures of him on the game camera that weekend. Dirtbag driving up to the gate in his big truck. Dirtbag trying to jimmy the lock. Dirtbag leaving and returning with a hacksaw to try to cut the lock. Dirtbag leaving in frustration. Dirtbag returning with his truck. Dirtbag leaving again. Dirtbag ramming the gate uphill at full speed. Finally, Dirtbag through the windshield, laying on the hood as the smashed truck rolls back down the mountain. The gate didn't even bend. The truck sure did. He lived, still not as ugly as me, but we can't get everything we want. 20-odd shots and more than enough proof to show to the judge to get a protection order. And since it was a small town, the same judge wasn't too pleasant with him when he took his last penny during the lawsuit. We even got his parcel and his flea-infested shack. We let him keep his busted-up Dodge. The next one is a petty revenge story. 2 years ago, I used to share an apartment with my sister and 2 other roommates. In the flat next to us lived 3 girls whom we had known for years, as we all used to live in the same dorm years ago, plus their 2 new roommates whom we didn't know well. The other girls were messy and kind of immature because they were younger than us, but we all mostly got along since we go way back. This one time, my sister and one of our roommates got into a huge argument with the girls from the other flat because they took utensils and clothes from our place without permission and lost them. I didn't participate in the argument, but there was obvious tension between the 2 flat residents. Anyway, a few days after that, after a long day of being cooped up in the library preparing for a difficult final, I got home late at night, and there was only one of my roommates home that night. Pretty much as soon as I got home, my face started swelling up and my tooth started aching like crazy. I was in so much pain I started crying, and there were no painkillers, and I had no way to get out to the pharmacy that late at night. My roommate, who also had nothing to do with the earlier argument, knocked on the door of our next-door neighbors, and one of their newer roommates whom we barely knew answered the door. My roommate then explained the situation to her, that I'm in excruciating pain, and asked if she could borrow some painkillers. The girl looked my roommate up and down and told her, "Oh, I have painkillers, but I'm not going to give them to her, because I'm the sister of the girl who got into a silly argument with her roommates." Obviously, I was stunned someone could be this petty, but I let it go, and I survived the night. Now, here's the pettiness on my behalf. A few days after that, I happened to be home late at night, and I heard the doorbell ring. I opened the door, and lo and behold, it was the same girl who refused to spare me an ibuprofen a few days ago. Except instead of being snarky, she looked super distraught and defeated. She looked both surprised and relieved that I was the one who answered the door that night. She opened her mouth and said, I'm sorry. I don't know how to say this. My charger died on me, and I have a final tomorrow morning and a submission now, and I just started preparing. I know you have one like mine, and I was wondering if I can borrow yours." Obviously, she was down on her luck that day, but because I wasn't my usual generous self, I looked her up and down and said, "No, sorry, I'm using it right now," and shut the door in her face. This might be the pettiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I don't exactly hate myself for it. The next one is an entitled people story. I totally neglected to check on my post for the last few days, and it seems I angered the Reddit gods. This post was removed, so I revised the title, hoping that would appease them. As I stated before, life has been pretty great, except for what I'm about to post here. Just a little update on me and my kids. We're all doing well. I'm still with my boyfriend Kyle, and we're enjoying a meaningful, loving, and wild relationship. I'm no longer a dancer as I had to have some surgery on my lower back to fix a spinal issue that I had been dealing with for a number of years. Due to some in-house drama at the club, I decided to quit. Nothing post-worthy, as it really had nothing to do with me personally. I now work from home again, but I'm still good friends with everyone at the club. Anyway, that's about it for the update. On to the insanity. Well, as you saw by the title, you might have a clue. I got a phone call a month ago, and it was told to me that my mother, who I call Beelzadiot, passed away in prison from a stroke. At first, I didn't care. I told them that it was their problem, not mine, but my attitude changed when they told me that I was entitled to some inheritance. That threw me for a loop. Beelzadiot never had a will, so whatever she had in finances and assets was to be split between me and my two siblings. Apparently, she has been dead for over 4 months, and I was only just informed about it. Trippy. I became unhinged when I heard the number. From the deaths of my grandparents, this idiot was sitting on nearly 500K. I had assumed she squandered the money to pay for her own bullcrap during the years I still lived with her, which was why she always demanded money from me. But no, she never touched it and just lived off Social Security, whatever she could get from relatives, and my income up until I moved out. I was seething. Not only did she have the money to pay her own bills, but she took so much money from me over the years, and all of the bullcrap she put me through, all because of her own greed and narcissism. I was furious. In total, she had the 500K, the house, and my grandparents' house in assets. A lawyer was assigned to her estate recently to work everything out, and she spoke to my siblings about their shares. Because they are also in jail, they want me to be the one to handle it all. So I had to take time off work and go back to my old state to handle everything. I visited my siblings in jail and we talked. They both acknowledged that Beelzadiot had destroyed their lives in many ways and manipulated them into treating me like crap. I learned the reason behind why Beelzadiot had it out for me. I was the only one that worked hard to succeed in life. My siblings were both lazy and just gave in whenever she snapped her fingers. Not me. I was the better child, and she resented me for it. She saw I was going to surpass her in life, and it bothered her. She did love my son, but it was a love that was built on a foundation of jealousy and bitterness that she felt for me. Not healthy. I chose to have her cremated as I wasn't going to plan some elaborate funeral for the woman who tried to destroy my life and kidnap my kid. Her ashes were dumped into the nearest body of water, eliminating her from existence. Farewell, Beelzadiot. My siblings asked me to hold their shares until they were released. They both apologized and said they won't be a bother to me once they are. I told them it was no trouble and that I forgive them. Maybe we can work on some form of familial relationship once they are out. Maybe. I'm very skeptical. I decided to give them both the houses and their shares of the money once they are free. I have no desire to live in my old state again so close to my ex-husband. I set up a bank account and put their shares into it, and it'll sit there until they are free. The house keys are in a safety deposit box at the bank, along with the house deeds and some other heirlooms I don't want for myself. I was able to go into my old house and collect a few things I had left behind when I moved. On to the drama. A few of my crappy relatives had learned about Beelzadiot dying and filed in small claims court to sue me for a cut of the inheritance. Apparently, Beelzadiot had borrowed a lot of money from them and never paid it back, so they were going to go after me for it. The judge dismissed their cases because there was no contract, and because Beelzadiot is dead, there was no way to determine if their claims were true or not. If they had simply asked me, I would have given them some of the money, but now because they tried suing me, I'm keeping the cash out of ducking spite. One of them even tried to get their claim on Judge Judy, but it didn't work. I guess Judge Judy had better crap to do. LOL. No, woman, I will not appear on national television so you can get some petty revenge against me for something my mother did. Duck you. This relative, who is a cousin, has been all over Facebook, threatening me for the better part of a week. She is making claims against me that I am abusing my children, threatening to call CPS, that I stole from her, and a bunch of other crap that the other relatives are trying to question me over. I sent her a very direct message that if she didn't tell the truth, I would be sending the screenshots to her employer and filing against her in small claims court. I reminded her that her case was thrown out because she can't get blood from a turnip. Beelzadiot borrowed money. Sorry, but that isn't my problem. She was forced to tell the truth, and now many of my relatives won't talk to her. Mind you, most of them are crappy, so they get no points for the minor amounts of integrity. I'm back home now and ready to continue on with my life like this last month didn't happen. People are crazy. The next one is an entitled parent story. My daughter had her 9th birthday last week. Since she was very young, she accompanied me in nearly everything I did. As I like to cook and bake, she also had already plenty of experience helping by making various dishes and cakes. For her last birthday, however, she wanted to go solo for the first time, meaning I was to sit and wait in case she had a question, but everything else was up to her. She was incredibly proud, and so was I. From picking the recipe, measuring, mixing, etc., the only thing I did was pull it out of the oven. She then proceeded to make the frosting and decorate the cake, again all by herself. Needless to say, everybody was very proud of her, and she was really looking forward to sharing her cake with the family and chipping in with everyone about her process. My mom is also a baker, and she heavily complimented my daughter on how wonderful the cake looked and tasted, and soon all of us will be coming to my daughter for advice. My daughter was glowing with joy. Everybody complimented her, as the cake was indeed delicious and beautiful. That was apparently too much for my dad, who started to get increasingly fussy. First off, he started his, "Maybe you are trying to poison us with this" jokes, and I shushed him. Then when everybody asked my daughter about how she did it, he got louder and louder, interrupting her to tell us all that he is also capable of making cake. His cakes will always taste better. It wasn't even a difficult cake, etc. Every time somebody else told him to be quiet, as it was my daughter's moment. So he waited to let the stupid cake talk pass and then started interrupting every conversation that followed just to make it all about him. He even kind of pounded when she opened her presents, as nobody asked what he thought of the presents. So yeah, dear people of Reddit, that is my dad, trapped in the body of a 65-year-old man with the mind of a bratty 3-year-old. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.